Take friends camping. Me and friend fishing. Ask her how she's been, playing the catch-up game since it's been years since we hung out. Tells me she's glad to be out cause her house is haunted. Lol, okay. Take her back to main camp. She left her phone. Go back to get it. There's some weirdo out there. Forget this? And shows me the phone. Yeah, thank you so much. Hands me the phone and walks off. Week later, friend calls me to ask if she can stay with me. Say yeah. Decide to go in and grab her bags for her. Is this when you get possessed and kill me? I'm ready for some Evil Dead shit. She gets mad. Ask where she normally hears stuff. Tells me mostly in the attic and the basement. And when she comes home, stuff is misplaced or missing. Tell her we'll check her attic tomorrow. Whatever I can do to make her feel better. Load her bag up. Look across street before slamming trunk. See a guy 2 houses down and across the street. Kinda looks like the guy from the woods. Get in car and drive by as we head to my home. Sure enough, it's Woods guy. Ask her about him. That's the landlord's brother. He's really nice. Don't bother telling her I seen him in the woods that day. Next day, tell her we're staying at her house tonight. Drop her off. Park car 2 blocks away, as I'm afraid it will ruin my plan. Walk back and go inside. Don't say a word the entire fucking time. Only communicate via text. Wait and wait in attic all night. Nothing happens. Next day she goes to work and I stay in her attic. After a quick power nap, I post back up. 3 hours later, hear sounds in basement. Decide to creep down into her room with old Mossy and my phone ready. Who's creeping on who now? Her door begins to open. Hear the person walking through. Hear her drawers open and a belt unbuckle and some unzipping. Oh God, is this real? Take a quick peek. Landlord's brother is masturbating with her undies. Kick the door shut and point old Mossy at him. He jumps and turns around. Stops as he sees me standing. Ask him if I made him wet or the panties. Thought it was clever, but the joke bounced. Tell him lay on the floor as is and turn his palms up and cross his legs with his head down. Says he'll grab my gun if I try to call the cops. Joke's on you, bud. I've had them on the line the whole time. Start shouting the address. 10 minutes or so, cops finally show up. Almost got shot cause I was the one with the gun. But, lol, I complied. And didn't fuck myself. Turns out there's a secret tunnel between the shed and the basement built by the last owner. And the brothers knew. Both were stalking her for the 3 months she was there. She's my wife now. Even now, she gets sketched out if I make a sound in the basement, and she doesn't know if I'm down there or not. 2008. Dad's a cop. Tells me about how he'd gotten sent out on a domestic violence call. Isn't given a lot of info about it, just told to hurry up and get there. First to arrive. There's a guy sitting on the curb in front of the house. Totally calm. Dad asks what's going on. Guy says he needs an ambulance. What for? Dad asks. For the body inside. That's how he phrases it. The body. Guy says he wants it gone. Dad's getting really concerned, but waits for backup. Backup gets there. They go inside. House smells like rot. There's definitely someone dead in here. They work their way to the back of the house. Little utility closet at the end of the hallway. Open it up. There's a body inside. Closet is filthy. Looks like it's been lived in for months. Scratch marks on the door. Guy calls from the living room. It's great. I won't have to lock it anymore. Body is a horribly emaciated girl. Something wrong with her eyes. Crusted shut with evil-looking green and yellow discharge. Scratch marks like she's been clawing at it. Skin is covered in sores. Dad said the shit and piss in it was so overwhelming, he almost threw up. The floor had actually started to rot. They take the guy down to the station, and he seems totally calm, and with it. They start talking to him. Dad and other cops manage to piece it together. Turns out, the guy had gotten a divorce, and it ended badly. Started having these thoughts that his kid wasn't really his kid. Starts believing she's some kind of demon. His proof? Kid has blood-red eyes. Doesn't cry when he hits her. Guy legitimately convinces himself that his kid is the source of all of his problems. Locks her in the closet and padlocks it shut. Leaves her in there to die. Kept saying that she didn't cry, and that's how he knew she was evil. Medical examiner finds out the kid has some kind of infection. Blocked her tear ducts, hence the red eyes and lack of crying. Kid died an absolutely horrific death, for no reason. Jesus Christ. Living in a house close to woods. Going to get some pre-chopped wood for the fireplace. Cat comes with me. Cat acts like it's being watched. Kinda creepy. Cat goes off into woods. Moment later, hear high screech or something. Freaks me out. Note back to house. Cat is nowhere to be seen. Couple of hours later, see Cat walking across my yard, but something is wrong. It walks in a twitching way, just as if it's not accustomed to its own body. Hear scraping at door. Hear kind of wheezy meowing. Doesn't really sound like Cat. Meowing eventually becomes identical to Cat's meowing. Let Cat in. Catch a glimpse of Cat's front legs. They seem to be bruised and has some kind of wound on them. Tactically smell the cat. Smells like blood, copper, and ozone, especially the wounds. Shit, friend, it's the goatman.jpg. K has prepared me for this. Casually talk to Cat about previous events. It acts like it does not know anything or doesn't remember. Seems to not remember where its litter is, since it just dropped a dookie on the floor. It's also throwing up all around, trying to mimic cat behavior. Continue talking to it, as to not raise suspicion while lighting a smoke, and start smoking like mad. The ash is kinda white, collected in hand. It still does walk in a twitchy way, doing cat stuff, like try chasing its toys. Same meows all the time. It learns quickly, still not accustomed to especially the front legs. Act like I have to get something from other room. Dip tips of 22s in the ash in my hand. Into 1022 it goes. Tactically out of my room, put 2 pops in center mass. Unheavenly screeching and twitching, 1 pop in head. It just lies there. Nope. Betamax out to my car. Drive fast as fuck into local ghetto. Score 1 kilogram of heroin. Drive back. Dissolve drugs and marinade syringe while in car. Tactically my way back into the house. It still just lies there. Maybe the ash did the trick. .avi. Rather safe than sorry, shoot that fucker up with drugs. No reaction. Just lies there. Figure it must be dead by now. Throw it out into woods. 2 months later, it's no longer there. Where did it go? Never saw my cat again after that. I reckon it was consumed by the skinwalker/goatman. Still happy to get out alive, though. I am the slayer of the goatman. I think reading about skinwalkers was my biggest mistake ever. It reminds me of something I never wanted to think about again. It gets more horrifying for me to know that other people experienced something similar. Be kid and play outside a lot with friends. Live in village next to forest. The nearest house to the forest wall belongs to a friendly old man. He gives us candy and treats us like his grandsons. As time goes on, he becomes weaker and has to use a cane to walk. One day, his attitude changes abruptly. Sits in his rocker on his porch, staring into the village. Doesn't recognize us anymore. Sometimes stands up to go inside. This goes on for a week. Parents tell us to leave him alone because he's facing death. We still ride our bikes past his house. One day, a kid notices that he doesn't use his cane to walk. His movements are very stiff, though. Other kid moans that he doesn't get candy anymore, and we should observe him to check if he's eating them himself. Kid logic. Hide in a bush behind a window and peek inside. The old guy just stands up straight, something we thought he wasn't able to do, in the middle of his living room, and has an emotionless and blank expression on his face. I still remember his hands weirdly gesticulating with nobody. All of us get creeped out. We run back to our bikes. Hear door opening. Old guy comes out and opens his mouth, but no voice can be heard. Reasonable kid asks if he needs help. He doesn't reply, but gets on his knees and pulls sticks covered in candy cane paper out of his trousers. "He's crazy," a friend commentates. We leave. Next day, the ambulance and police investigate the house. Apparently, the old man has been found dead in his bed. Overhear a conversation between paramedic and cop. Remember it, like yesterday. "Unfortunately, he's been dead for over a week. Think it's strange, since we saw the old man alive a day before. Village is shocked about the death, but everyone believes the paramedic made a mistake. Ride my bike days later past Grandpa's house. See a human-like figure standing in the forest, watching the house. Go home and develop sleep problems." I put it down as a weird childhood experience that could be explained with logic, but many things are characteristics of skinwalkers. Thanks, X. One from my small town in New Hampshire. Only really have heard it from my family and surrounding friends. Though I think a lot of people have experienced this in some form or another, and don't want to say, because it sounds stupid. And the reason it sounds stupid is because it's aliens. Not greys, but something pretty different. Quadrupeds, about 10 to 20 feet tall. Human-like, but with elongated portions, colored gray or white. Kinda looks like SCP-096 if it was much larger. But I wasn't even using the internet at that point that I have the memory. So it wasn't something I made up because I read a spooky creepypasta. I have a very strange childhood memory of seeing 2 to 3 of them in our front yard, romping about. Asked my brother about it, and he got quiet for a while. Then said that it was probably just my imagination. Then proceeded to scare me with an alien costume for about 3 years. Pick related. Pretty sure that's exactly what it was. Most of my family and friends in town are afraid of aliens. Without asking my friends about it, multiple of them have given similar reports of such beings. It's probably just a big jape, but fun nonetheless. I have a couple spoopy stories from growing up. To make it easier to tell, I made a very rough, not-to-scale draft of the house's layout. I tried researching it, but the only thing I could really discover is that it was built in the 1920s as a duplex. Grandpa bought it in the 60s and converted it to a single-family home to raise my 2 uncles and my mom. My parents bought it in 97 when I was about 7 or 8 to raise my sister and I. I heard stories from my mom saying that when she was growing up there, she and my grandma would experience some weird things. Shadow figures moving in the dark, banging noises in the basement, appliances starting by themselves in the kitchen, footsteps in empty rooms. Dogs would freak out randomly sometimes. Supposedly, my grandpa had seen shadow figures too when working on the house, but he never talked about it, and never was willing to open up about it. I was also told this story by my mom. Be me, aged 3 or 4, visiting grandparents for the day. Mom and grandma in the dining room talking. I'm just sitting on the floor with a toy. Start smiling, waving, and talking to someone standing in the family room. Both mom and grandma look back, and no one is there. Ask me who I'm talking to. I say, "The lady," and then tell her bye before stopping and go back to playing. I have more though after we moved in. Fast forward to 97. finally settled in and having a sleepover with some kids from school. All camped out in the living room with the lights dimmed so we don't step on each other if we need the bathroom. I'm having a hard time falling asleep and feel like something is watching me. Even as a 7-year-old, I think this feeling is stupid because I never had this problem before when staying with my grandparents. Looking around and look towards the hallway between the master bedroom and other bedroom. See a small black figure that looks like a kid about my age, squatting down and peeking around the corner. Think it's one of the kids, because the figure is pretty solid looking, but it's pitch black. Can't see any facial features or anything even in the dim light. We both stare at each other for like 10 minutes before I finally feel exhausted and pass out. No one else saw the shadow kid that night. Shortly after that, I started hearing loud banging noises in the basement. It sounded like someone was slamming the dryer door shut multiple times. And I'd often feel really uneasy going down there. Like I would go to get some clothes and then feel like something was stalking me from the darkness. I can't tell you how many times I would bolt up the stairs because I felt like something was going to lunge from the unfinished part of the basement and drag me away. But it wasn't until a bit later that stuff got real weird. Time to talk about the Shadow Man. A few years later, sister is now 3, and she's in bedroom 1. One night she freaks out for no explained reason and sleeps with my parents. The next night they try to put her to bed, but she absolutely refuses to go into her room at night, even to play. They can't get any reason as to why from her. Over the next few months, my parents try everything to make her sleep in her own room, but she always resorted to sleeping in the living room or with them. One night, she and my mom are in her room cleaning. My mom goes to open the closet door, and my sister freaks out. "No, Mommy, the man is in there. Don't let him out, please." What the fuck, that JPEG? My sister starts breaking down, and after my mom calms her down, she gets more of the story. Sister says that one night, she was in bed, and the closet door opened by itself. It's an old house, and our closets are like pig-related. They just don't open by themselves. My mom thinks my sister just had a bad dream that she can't get over. So, we switch. I get put in bedroom 1, and my sister is in bedroom 2. Everything is okay for about a week, and then she starts talking about how the man is back in her new room. Can't get much of a description from her other than he's tall and all black. He never talks but just stares and makes her feel bad. Now, we were raised Catholic, so naturally, my parents got a priest over to do a house blessing, but it took multiple blessings and about 5 years before she felt comfortable sleeping in any bedroom again. I never saw the Shadow Man, but I had other things happen. Actually, fuck. Now that I think back to it, I might have seen the Shadow Man. Now mid-2000s, I'm starting high school. My sister is back in bedroom 1, and this was still somewhat in the middle of trying to chase away the Shadow Man. I'm back in bedroom 2, and bedroom 3 had been turned into a computer room. On multiple occasions, I'd be up late playing on my PC. Would randomly smell cigar smoke, but only in that room, and only between 2 and 3 a.m. No one in the family smoked, let alone would smoke a cigar. All windows were closed, and it was super late at night, so there wasn't any neighbors. It would linger in the room for about 15 minutes, and then just disappear as quickly as it came. Throughout the years, I would hear footsteps, particularly on the stairs going towards the basement, when I knew no one else was up. I would hear whispers from the back part of the house, and would hear my name called when home alone. One night, got up to get a drink from kitchen, saw a strange ball of light hovering in the dining room and disappear. I thought it must have been a trick of the mind from my eyes being messed up from staring at a screen all night. Heard footsteps to my right. looked into the living room, saw a silhouette of a man walking slowly towards the hall on the other side. At first, I thought it's just my dad and continued towards the kitchen. Then, I realized that I didn't see him in the hall when I opened my room. I couldn't make out any features of him. And I heard no footsteps until after the ball of light disappeared. Hurried back into the living room and rushed to the master bedroom. Looked in, and both my parents were sound asleep. Sure, it could have been my dad, but all of this happened in less than 2 minutes. I found it somewhat hard to believe that he would be able to make it back into bed and fall asleep so fast that he was snoring that quickly, especially without ever hearing or noticing me. And last memorable story that I have. B19 and sister is 12. By this time, the Shadow Man doesn't appear to be hiding in the closet anymore, but she's still freaked out and favors the living room to sleep. I've switched bedroom 2 into my game room with a futon, a PC, and consoles. Bedroom 3 is now where I sleep. Go to pull an all-nighter because I was waiting for something to be released on the Xbox Live Marketplace at like 5 a.m. It's around 3 or 4 a.m., and decide to lay down on my bedroom for a bit. The cat is chilling on the bed with me, doing cat things. I have my eyes closed for a few minutes when, all of a sudden, I hear loud footsteps. They sound like the steps of a young kid running. The noise starts at the hallway, goes through bedroom 2, and stops dead right at the door, going into bedroom 3, where I am. Think it's my sister who is flipping out over something and saw my lights on. Get up to turn to her and ask what she needs. Stop mid-sentence because there's no one there. Get up from the bedroom and look into the room, and it's completely empty. The hair on the back of the cat's neck is up, and she is in a defensive position on the bed looking cautiously into the room, and kind of making a hissing noise. I go and check it out and find my sister sound asleep on the sofa, with dog sleeping by her. Check out the rest of the house, and find nothing. Go back into bedroom 2. Cat is still sitting at the door at bedroom 3, and refuses to come into the other room. So I go back and sit on the bed with the cat to calm her down, while trying to figure out what the fuck happened. Things kind of died down after that. I moved out 2 years later. My mom and sister still both told me about activity around the house. It apparently got more active after my dad died in the living room, but my mom assumed it was just his spirit and was cool with it. Sometimes, I wonder what the new owners experience, if anything at all. I live in Phoenix near the res. I was driving home one night at 2 a.m. from work on a dark road. It's about 8 miles long, and I saw a pair of glowing green/orange eyes staring at me and my car. As I approached pitch black, I floored it at 90 miles per hour. And as I looked in the rear view, it was following me, closer till I got back to a city intersection. Ultra spoop. When I was 8, I looked out my window and I just saw eyes. Nothing around them, nothing holding them up. Just fucking eyes. They looked human except they were just the purest shade of blue. And I cannot recreate the sense of fear that I felt. Well, I've met a real witch a few years ago. When I was 12, I visited my uncle and aunt a lot. Really a lot. To make it short, my uncle had a lover, and everybody knew about it. Even my aunt. Not much of a big deal, I thought. Now, there was always a rumor about the lover. Her mother was a witch. Like a pseudo-real one. Naturally, everyone laughed about it. Well, at least in my family. Well, the funny thing is that both the house of my uncle and his lover were exactly in the front of each other, face to face. One day, my aunt kicked out my uncle from the house, for good reasons indeed. The day next to that, this witch insulted us the whole day, like she was screaming insults to us coming from her house. She told us all kinds of things, and everyone heard it. Her voice were piercing in our ears, And, at least in my case, I had a horrid headache for a week after that. She screamed to us for like 3 hours straight. We were confused as hell. When she finally stopped, everything went nuts. My aunt was pregnant. She had like 5 to 6 months, and it was our third child, but first one in years. Suddenly, a black fluid started to drop from her womb. Like, a lot. It wasn't totally liquid, and there was a lot of little things inside of it. Not one of us dared to touch it. The smell of that thing was the worst. It was like the stench of death. Now that I'm 20, I can make that association, but at the time, I had no idea about that. Then she started to vomit blood. Again. A lot. We took her to the hospital, and we expected the worst. A spontaneous abortion, but nothing happened. The doctor said that everything was okay. Like we invented the whole story. The baby came a few months later, completely healthy and normal. To this day, we don't know what the fuck happened, but the stench didn't go away for weeks. It was really fucked up. My brother used to talk about this creepy shit that his friends would talk about on some ROM translation group when he was a teenager. When I was younger and he went to college, there was a period of like a month where we would talk about it every day. I guess one of these guys he met was like into translating Dujins too. And there was some weird shit about how he wanted to meet/kidnap a girl he didn't know. Like he wanted to do this spontaneously. That was his fantasy. And act out some of these fetishes on her. Like I don't know much about girl stuff, but I guess it was stuff like cutting off their arms/arms and pissing on them. Stuff like that. As a kid, I thought my brother was being serious. And then, as I got older, I was like, first of all, what the fuck? Obviously this is bullshit. And also, second of all, why the fuck was my brother telling me these insane creepy stories? So, I was kind of weirded out. So then flash forward to like a month ago, and I meet two of his old friends at this social thing. And they don't really remember me or want to talk to me, but towards the end of the night, they are literally talking about some weirdo freak who used to harass them when they were teenagers. And it sounds like exactly the same thing. Like some weird anime shit, and cutting off people's arms. So, I'm actually pretty freaked the fuck out right now. In 2005, early 2006, in Jalalabad, Afghanistan. We were having a boring day. Nothing had been going on for about a week. Everything was quiet and going good. Had just come back from a vehicle patrol, and was counting everything getting ready to put the boys in the rack. All of a sudden, all the radios came to life. Someone on the other end is screaming about being ambushed and getting whacked to pieces. Everyone in earshot gets that oh shit look on their faces, and I yell at my APL to get the trucks reloaded and have everyone suited up and ready to roll in 5 minutes, while I run to the COC and find out where we're needed. As I enter the COC, it is hopping. Radios going off, guys still screaming, guns going off. The RO is trying to break in and find out who is in contact. Jump on BN Freak and ask them who is in contact and if we need to roll to them. BN says everyone reports negative contact and to stand by. BN gets in contact with Higher, who is also receiving the transmission, and they report all units are reporting negative contact. Radio's going crazy. You can hear all kinds of screaming. People in pain, people screaming to break contact. And suddenly, we hear, "Get that GD-60 rolling!" We all look at each other and ask, 60? As in, the machine gun. Voice comes back screaming about, "Get the pig going! Get it going!" Then, he starts screaming in pain, and the transmission cuts out. No one had contact that day. No one. That was the freakiest thing that ever happened to me. Had a nightmare about it that night. I'll repost this from the other unexplained thread. When I was like 8 or something, I used to sleep with both my room and hall light on. I left my door open. One night, I was awake fairly late into the night, just trying to fall asleep, when I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. My room is directly at the top of the stairs. My bed was placed at an angle with my door, so that I could see the top of the stairs without actually seeing down them. As the footsteps kept going, I saw a shadow on the wall, moving slowly up the stairs. I shit you not, right before, and I mean right before, whatever it was would have gotten to the top of the staircase. I worked up the courage to say, "Mom?" And the shadow paused for a second, before quickly retreating back down the stairs. Stayed up for a while after that, but eventually passed out from just sheer tiredness. For some reason, I never really asked my parents or anything about it. Just sort of repressed it because I didn't really want to think of it. I'm pretty convinced it was a home invader. I doubt anything paranormal would get skittish over a child's voice. We live in a small neighborhood, so I'm not really surprised that the dude would have taken off at the sound of a voice. To this day, I refuse to mention it to my sisters or parents. Don't really see a reason to scare them like that. Canada friend here, but from the town I'm from, we've got legends of a skunk ape-esque creature living in the wetlands around here. Old friend's family says it got their dog. I'm not inclined to believe them, but what I do believe in is the Wendigo stories. Local indigenous folks get freaked the fuck out sometimes. Some fuck shit goes on around here sometimes. Not in recent years, but natives have stories going way back, talking about this Wendigo. They say he used to be a brave warrior, but he got lost in a battle one winter and ate someone. He turned into a Wendigo and massacred the village. There's plenty of stories they have of the Wendigo coming back every few years and taking people. Only reason I believe is because a native girl went missing, but authorities didn't do shit. Not out of the ordinary, officials don't give a fuck about the indigenous at times. But what is weird is that the rest of the natives locked themselves up in their homes and didn't come out for a few days. We got a massive cold front and snow for those next few days. I've got some native friends, so I went to go check on them and make sure they were all good, not freezing to death. And when I got there, it was just getting dark. I knocked on doors. No answer. I thought it was weird, but I heard a door getting knocked on down the street. I looked over and saw this big fucking thing. It looked skinny as all hell. It was dark, so I couldn't tell the skin tone, but it just looked fucking gross. It was missing some skin and had this big fucking grin on its face. Looked like that fucking SCP, but all it did was just walk off. Next day, the cold front passed, and the snow started to melt. I talked to some of the natives about it, and they said it was probably the Wendigo. I don't fuck around outside when it gets cold out of nowhere anymore now. Friend told me the creepiest story from her life. She was a little girl in her great-grandma's family home. It was a huge place and incredibly old. They used to own slaves. Anyway, when she was little, she decided to sleep in the building in the back with all the beds because it was cool and she could make a big-ass blanket for it in there. She had no clue it was an old slave quarters in the 1800s. After making the fort and having her fun, she said she felt an enormous, inexplicable guilt fall over her for messing up the beds, so she took the time to remake all of them. Then she slept in a bed tucked in a far corner with a wall against the headboard and side of it. She then realized that the beds were very small, and the blanket was thin and not nearly enough warmth for the cold of the night. She was trying to readjust for comfort when the blanket she was readjusting just got ripped off of her violently and disappeared into the darkness. She was terrified and looked around the floor and room and didn't see it anywhere. Then she figured maybe it fell between the wall and bed underneath. So she said she went under the bed and saw it bundled up in a very tight ball all the way back and against the wall. So she slowly went to go grab it, and when it moved, she saw the face of a small black boy staring at her. He said, "I'm cold," and pulled the blanket back to the wall and reballed it. She then sat on the bed, terrified, until her mom came in the next morning, asking why she wasn't covered up, because it was freezing that night. Her mom said, "Why aren't you covered? It's super cold in here." And still in shock, my friend looked up and said, "He's cold," pointing under the bed where the blanket was still balled up. Then, when she told her mom the story, her mom thought she was fucking with her, until she realized her daughter didn't even know it was a slave house. When I was a kid, my parents moved our family in with our grandparents because we were struggling and poor. Our room was at the back of the house, just across the hall from my grandparents, and since we were so small, we shared a queen-sized bed. We had this huge metal wardrobe in the room. It belonged to my grandma, but I think we kept our toys in it. A piece of wood held the door shut when it wasn't in use, since it was old and didn't have a latch. Anyway, after a while, we started to hear very loud, frantic banging coming from inside it. I don't remember when it started, but I remember waking up one night and being terrified because it was so loud and so close. I remember staying up some nights, just listening to it. And a few times, I'd look over and my brother would just be looking at me. We would stare at each other in silence, both scared, but too afraid to say anything or move. Sometimes it even seemed like the wardrobe would shake from the force of whatever was inside. My mother doesn't remember us telling her about the banging, but when I brought it up, she told me that she remembers both of us were terrified of the wardrobe, and we wouldn't go near it after a while. It was moved into the basement when we moved out of that room. What's really odd is that even though my brother and I both heard the banging, none of the adults ever did. The door was always left open since we were so young at the time, and nobody ever came in to see if something was wrong. It was like they couldn't hear it. One night when we were a little older, I remember sitting up with my brother in that room, wide awake even though it was well into the night. We were talking quietly in the dark, while the house creaked around us. I remember him looking up at the ceiling and saying, "You know when the house creaks and cracks at night, and they say it's just the house settling? They're lying. It's something else. The house is already settled. There's something else here, making noises." Little utility closet. Little utility. Yo, Jesus. Little utility closet. Oh my God. Little utility. My fucking God. I'm gonna lose my fucking shit. Little utility closet.